All right, folks, long time no talk. I have decided to get back into sharing some content on YouTube. I'm going to start out with an overall review of some of the things I've done in the hobby for the last couple of years, and thought today would be a good day to show off my brand new Second Punic War Hannibal forces. So this army is, today I'll just go over the things that are unique to this army and not some of the units that overlap with some of my other historical armies. But this army is based for a game called Kings of War, which I've fallen in love with unit style basing, where every model is on, what you can think of as a Warhammer 20-man regiment of infantry. These movement trays come from a company called Ironheart Artisans or Ironheart Designs, one or the other. I apologize for forgetting me. You can look it up, you'll find it. So let's start with this unit. This is my favorite unit from the army. These are the Lgurians. So they are a people that live north of modern day Genoa in Liguria, as the name of the province, and they're described by, I don't remember if it's Livy or Polybius, one or the other describes them as a sturdy, relatively short, dark-haired mountain people. In the material culture, there's a few pieces of evidence that I used when putting together this unit. One was they seem to have an affinity for birds and iconography related to birds. There's a famous bronze shield and ceremonial axe, I believe, that are associated with, I don't know if it's presumed chief's burial or something like that. I'm forgetting the details, but I've got that bronze shield represented in the leader of the unit. Because of their proximity to various Celtic cultures, which this technically is not a Celtic culture, but due to their proximity, they, I think, would have shared some of the same traits, see like an affinity for stripes and bright colors, and you look at the shield patterns, and those are definitely feel Celtic. There is a historical record of them having these squared off shields. So in selecting shields from the Victrix kit, I made sure to grab the ones that are almost hexagonal, elongated hexagonal in shape. I also wanted to take care to show them all not wearing trousers. They're all just wearing tunics. Again, this is linked to ancient accounts, and if you take a look at the kind of Bible for this time period, the WRG Punic and Macedonian Wars hardcover, which I'm looking around to see if it's near me. I'll show that in a future video. The depiction they have for Lgurians looks really a lot like this guy on the end. They say that he's wearing a cream-colored tunic and has this, red-colored hexagonal shield. So this unit can represent a lot of different things in the game. I tend to have it represent units that move through rugged terrain easily and that have a ranged attack, and in this case it's their javelins that you're using as a ranged attack. They can fight pretty well, but typically I don't have them play the types of units that are anvils that'll just stay on the board forever. So as to not spend too much time on in one unit in particular, I'll switch over to the next one, and I'll actually make this one a twofer, because these are essentially the same thing and they're fielded together typically. So this kit is actually the first historical kit I ever assembled. This would have been way back in somewhere around 2009 or so, if I remember correctly. I think it was late 2009. I bought these at the same time as a friend and I were starting to just barely dip our toes into the historical water. And since we've both collected a ton of stuff in historicals, but these guys who I assembled right after I purchased them were primed and sitting on a shelf for many years. I got them out and I literally had to take a dust can to them to get the layers of dust off them. I reprimed them I bought some, new bits and bobs to go with them, the shield designs, and changed a few of the way some of them were assembled just so they fit this game a little better. And I field these typically as light spearmen or light kind of raw style troops in general. In Kings of War, you have this concept of a horde of infantry where it's 2 regiments pushed together. So instead of putting them all on one really long base, I put them on 2. And the main reason, well, there's kind of 2 reasons why. One, it gives me the flexibility to field them together or separate. The other is with those large horde trays, they're a little awkward to move on the table. They also are more prone to warping and bending. And even with these smaller regiment bases, you see, and they're starting to buckle a little. When I first started this army, I wasn't aware of the way to properly prep these MDF trays, which now I am, and you'll see the other ones don't have as much buckle on them. I spray them with dull coat or other matte sealer before putting any models on them or terrain or anything like that. That kind of sealing makes sure that, as far as I understand it, moisture can't get in to cause that bending. And I think it also creates a little more firmness on the top. So let me go on to the next one. Oh, and what do these guys represent typically? Numidians are the kit that they are. But as you see from the way I painted them, I treat them as Hellenistic style or Libby Phoenician style mercenary or conscript troops. In my Ptolemaics, they are Lycian spearmen or Therophori, and you'll see that some of them have javelins in their hands. They could also be pretty easily Ephrastian peltas, which are kind of a mix between what you might think of as a Therophori and a traditional peltas. All right, next unit, Libby Phoenicians, very similar. These guys are more the standard Carthaginian troop type, and that's what they're depicting. That's what I've depicted them as in this army. However, this unit, when I'm playing in my Ptolemaics, is a unit of spearmen from Serentia. I'm trying to think of the non-Roman name is Cyrene. I can't even think straight right now. The name of the modern day city. So this is a pure Victrix kit, and I should mention that the previous one was Wargames Factory. Victrix is much higher detail, has much better support for shield decals, a lot more character overall, easier to assemble, takes paint better, just everything about them is better. If you put them next to each other, you also notice that the scaling is just a little bit different. I'm not sure if it's really showing up here as much as it is live in person, but the Wargames Factory ones are much weedier than Victrix. And Victrix really, their figures dominate or tower over most of the historicals figures out there, as they're using a scale closer to maybe 7th or 8th edition era Warhammer figures. So these are Spearmen. Let's go to some Samnites next. So my forces are really meant to represent a later Second Punic War in central and southern Italy, Hannibal's forces in particular. And would, the Samnites of this time period really have fought with this much distinctive Samnite flair, or would they have really looked more like Romans? As they would have had some time serving with the Romans. I don't know, but I prefer to think of them in this kind of stereotypical way, as it's easier at a distance to immediately identify what they are, and it also gives like a lot of visual distinction across the army throughout the different units. With my Romans, I do plan to have allied Samnite divisions, but the way that I'm going to paint those is not going to be in this kind of stereotypical way that you see in frescoes and funerary inscriptions and things like that. It's going to be more like Romans with a little extra flair, like feathers and shield designs, as opposed to here, the each one has an individual outfit that's different from everybody else's outfit. You know, the variations are minor. It's like, do you have a stripe? Do you have cuffs or linings around it? But I tried to make everybody an individual. The Lgurians I followed that same pattern. With the Libby Phoenicians, they're a little more uniform and a little more drab, so I didn't feel the need to follow it. Just like the Lgurians, these Samnites are javelin toting, and they are meant to be, you know, pathfinding units that can fight, but don't hold up against a charge very well. All right, another one of my favorites. I probably have too many favorites in this army. These are, again, Victrix. I think this one is 100% Victrix, whereas Lgurians, I forgot to mention, Lgurians were Victrix components, but the bodies were actually from Wargames Atlantic. These are Victrix Iberians, and I put them in, you kind of see it there, a little bit of a swampy, marshy base. This is because at the time I was thinking of having my forces be themed around Trebia. So these were meant to be part of the flanking force. So I wanted to show them going across a marsh. Later on, I kind of changed paths. And as you can see from all the flowers and foliage on here, this definitely isn't depicting a December battle. This is, you know, a typical kind of, I think, a spring or summer look for really trying to depict Italy. With most of these, you know, when I'm putting them together, I try to convey information the way that they are based and aligned. So you see these guys, the Samnites and the Lgurians, are all on these raised bases. This is to depict their ability to move through terrain, and I field them as units who have abilities that let them ignore terrain. The Spearmen you saw were on just plain flat bases, and the flat bases are based the same in terms of visual style, but that flatness is showing, hey, these are troops that prefer to be out in the open, and that's how they operate best. So let me move on to the next one. Next unit, another one of these flat and in the open. This is actually two smaller units that I keep together on a magnetic tray, but these are Cerensian Cavalry when I field them with my Ptolemaics, and with my Carthage, they are Libby Phoenician Noble Cavalry. I tried to stay away from the stereotypical Carthaginian symbol of the, I don't know if it's associated with ball, but I think it's like a, kind of looks like a women's bathroom symbol and kind of has arms raised up. If you know Carthaginians, you know the symbol. I wanted to avoid that, and I wanted to include some imagery that's associated with Cerentia. In this case, there's like a strong association with some flowering plant. I forget what it is. I think it's related to a celery. I couldn't find any good decals with that, so I went with a palm tree. Felt like a good substitute. These guys are Warlord Games metal models where I've done some very simple conversions of chopping off arms and heads to put on some arms and heads that looked a little less a little less like Alexander's companion cavalry, really. Because before, all of them had this same helmet, the Boeotian style, think of it as like a Theban helmet. Staying with the cavalry, these are, and you got it, they are Pathfinder unit. This is a unit of pathfinding cavalry that's, I don't really have a tribe associated with this. This is kind of just some sort of Gaul or Celt. I put this together with shields from Victrix because I wanted to be able to leverage the really great relationship they would have with Little Big Man Studios, and I love the decals. But these models are resin models that are part of the Wargames or Warlord Games line, and I forget what they call their resin. I'll say a couple things about the resin now, because this is the first full unit I've done of these resins. They are very easy to get assembled and going because it's mostly one piece. You have to clean up a little bit of flash, and while you're cleaning the flash, you'll you can't really clean it in the way that you clean plastics, of kind of flat edge against it. You have to really dig out the flash with a sharp X-Acto. I'd also say that they don't keep paint well. They have some great detail, so it's actually really fun to paint them, and I actually kind of like the way that I did the striped pants on some of these guys. But the paint will rub right off if you don't have a really good sealer on there. And then the other thing you'll notice, like, look at this. I'm just barely touching it. This guy looks like he's ready to fall over. It goes back in place, but over time, I'm feeling like some of these are starting to slowly droop over. They're only held up by these really small, and this is a problem across all of Warlord's ranges that I have experience with. Their horses just have these really spindly lower legs and don't connect very solidly with anything. I had the same problem with the previous unit I showed, where I've had just horses snap off right at the hoof. I haven't had that problem with other companies. They don't have great integrated bases as part of this either. You know, they could have done some simple things to improve this, but I mean, these are 10, 20-year-old designs for some of these at this point, so I don't think there's going to be any changes happening. So this unit's great overall. I can't recommend the resins that they do unless you find them on deep sale, and they tend to go on deep sale pretty often, like 50%. I think that's because likely people don't like working with it. I'm happy to work with it when it's at half MSRP, not when it's anything more than that. I'm not going to spend too much time on these guys. These are Numidian Slingers. These were assembled at the same time as the kind of horde of Spearmen I brought up earlier. And they come from that same kit, the Wargames factory Numidians. One of the most versatile kits I've ever seen, ever. I really would love to buy more of them. The faces in particular are a real letdown on this kit. But one of the things that I want to experiment with the remaining ones that I have that are in, you know, various states of assembly is swapping out some of the heads and seeing if I can get some more mileage out of this kit. And I already have great mileage. I've got like 10 units made out of this one kit, and each one of them kind of looks like what they're meant to represent. They don't have a lot going on them, which makes it so that the paint job, the accessories you give them, the shields patterns you give them help display their character. I don't know if I'm describing it that well. But these were sitting on a shelf, dusty, for so long. I gave them, they had been painted way back when, but I gave them new highlights, new lease on life, and rebased them for Kings of War. Only a few left. I want to show some of the tokens that I use for Kings of War. These are from a company called, wow, I'm going to forget it. I'm going to have to follow up on this one. It's a company that I use for, New Line Designs. I use them for their 10mm stuff, and these are 10mm scale casualties, but they fit perfectly on these little 25mm tokens that can be used as objectives or waiver markers or disorder tokens, whatever you feel like. And these particular ones I've themed to Carthage, Paris, and Celts. And you see right there, that's that symbol. I think it's associated with ball. It's kind of that women's bathroom symbol I was describing earlier. So let me pull out some characters. These are some of the best models in terms of casting that are in the army. All right, let me re-angle a little bit for this one. Okay, so on the left you have Hannibal. This is him late war. See, he's got the eye missing. Not much to say here. He's from the, I think it's called Giants and Miniature. North Star sells them, and I think they're related to some of the subscription exclusive models for the Wargames Illustrated magazine, which they don't ship to the US anymore, so not much to say about them. This is a miniature, I believe, from Relic, and apologies, it might be from Agema. I get those two confused pretty often. I have a lot of miniatures from both of them, it is a shield-born Gaulish Celt-style leader. I run him as a special character in Kings of War, and I think he fits that pretty well. This is a Priest of Baal, so it's a little bit on the fantasy side of things. In the fantasy version of this Hannibal army, he's, you know, the priest that made Hannibal swear an oath as a child with his father present, which, you know, by itself is fantasy. I have here another one of those resin models from Warlord. I love this model, and this one worked out really well. I do have, you know, like the other models from them, I do have the complaints of doesn't take glue well. No matter how many times I glue this guy in, he won't stay. And then he's also bending as well, like the other ones are. Although his sense has really settled in. I do like the stripes quite a bit, so I'm going to field that model as much as I can. And over here we got Mago. Why is he Mago? Well, in Kings of War there's a character called Maghilda, and Mago is my representation of Maghilda. And he does have a stereotypical Carthaginian style shield, because I have no plans to field this particular model in anything but Carthage. In the back, we've got a few elephants. These are of the African variety. On the outsides, it's just, you know, dudes on African elephants. This is meant to be another Hannibal. And particularly, it's meant to be him coming out of the swamps. So I added a little water effect there and some reeds. I don't think reeds grow in Italy, but oh well. I gotta do more plant research next time. All right. And one more group to show you. So this final section are units that I painted exclusively for Kings of War. They can't be used for historicals because these are really fantasy-born elements. So in the front here, we've got 2 units of like Celt war dogs. You know, I've got Irish warhounds. They come out of the kit from Wargames Atlantic, which is an awesome kit. It's Dark Age Irish. It comes with 2 of these dogs per frame. I think you get 20 per box, which is really awesome. There's a lot of uses for having some dog figures. And then I put on a couple of Victrix skulls just in the center, just to give them a little bit of color and character. Not much to say about those units. I really don't love the way I did them. I'm okay with the basing, but I didn't paint them that well, or maybe there's not quite enough detail in those dog figures. I've got some other dogs that took dry brushing a lot better than these, as they had more raised details on the fur. So I might need to change my method when I'm painting the rest of them, and I have a ton more. On the right, I've got what's really just a giant verdigreed, or is this patina? I don't remember which is the word for bronze aging, but I've got a bronze statue here of, it's meant to be Hamilcar, and I can use this in historicals as literally just a statue, and it's a terrain piece. But in things like Kings of War, which I play, this is a giant or a titan of some sort that's fielded, that obviously, you know, statue come to life. It's fantasy. Trying to think of, what is it, Jason and the Argonauts, the giant statues walking. These I painted right after my last viewing of Jason and the Argonauts, and it was definitely inspired by that. This is a unit of animated statues. Originally, I was going to have them paired up with various Gorgons or Medusa figure. I have the Medusa figure. I haven't made any progress in getting her painted because I don't really have a use for her yet. But they're in this kind of more ruined Greek area, and I saved this type of ruined Greek basing just for my fantasy elements, as they're based a little bit differently from my historic elements. But I wanted them to still be able to visually be able to look like they belong in the same army, even though, you know, obviously if you look at this unit versus, you know, the Lgurians, they don't share a lot in common in terms of color palette, but that basing pulls them back together, I feel. And overall, you can look at this and still feel like they belong in the same army. At least it works for me. So that is my Hannibal army. This ended up taking a lot longer than I originally expected, but still under the time limit, luckily. I will do more of these if anybody ends up interested. I've made a lot of hobby progress over the last couple of years. Most of it focused on historicals, although a few fantasy projects as well, covering a lot of games. All right, well, take care, folks, and glad to be uploading another video.